My brother Jake always said I was too trusting. Maybe he was right. I'm sitting in my car outside the law office, engine running, heat blasting against the December cold. The papers are on the passenger seat, divorce papers that feel heavier than they should. 22 years of marriage, reduced to legal terminology and asset division. I keep telling myself I should feel relieved, but mostly I just feel empty. It started with a phone call 3 months ago, not the discovery. That came later. Just a simple call from my best friend Amy. Hey Lisa, quick question. Wasn't Tom supposed to be in Denver this week? I was folding laundry in our bedroom, the same bedroom where Tom and I had painted the walls sage green when we first moved in, back when we thought we'd grow old together in that house. Yeah, he's at some medical conference. Why? A pause, too long. I just, I thought I saw him at Starbucks on Fifth Street yesterday, but it was probably someone else. It was such a small thing. People make mistakes and all the time. But something in Amy's voice made me set down the towel I was holding. What did he look like? Lisa, I'm sure it wasn't him. The guy was with some woman, and they looked pretty close. I remember my heart doing this weird flutter thing. Not panic, not yet. Just a tiny alarm bell that I immediately tried to silence. It wasn't him, I said firmly. Tom's been texting me from the conference. Of course, sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. But she had said something. And once words like that are out there, they stick to you like smoke. Tom came home Sunday night with conference swag, a cheap pen, some pharmaceutical company brochures, stories about boring lectures and hotel food. He seemed tired but normal. He kissed me hello, asked about my week, helped me carry groceries in from the car. All the things he'd been doing for 2 decades, except he hadn't been in Denver. I know this because I called the hotel Monday morning. Dr. Thomas Manning had canceled his reservation 4 days before the conference. No explanation given. My hands were shaking when I hung up the phone. 22 years of marriage, and I just caught my husband in his first lie. At least his first lie that I knew about. The thing about discovering betrayal is that it doesn't happen all at once. It's like developing a photograph in a darkroom. The image appears slowly, piece by piece, until suddenly you can see the whole horrible picture. I started paying attention to things I'd been ignoring. The way Tom's phone was always face down on the table. How he'd started working late more often. The new cologne he claimed was a gift from a grateful patient. The way he'd become vague about his schedule, answering direct questions with shrugs and, I'll have to check. We'd been together since college. I was 21 when we met, a nursing student working part-time at the campus bookstore. Tom was in his second year of medical school, already serious and focused in a way that impressed me. He'd come in every Tuesday to buy textbooks, always polite, always leaving bigger tips than necessary. You don't have to do that, I told him one day, holding up the $5 bill he'd left for a $2 coffee. I know, he said, smiling, but you're always so nice to everyone, even the difficult customers. He'd been watching me. The thought thrilled me then. Our first date was at an Italian restaurant near campus. Tom ordered wine like he knew what he was doing, which he probably did. He came from money, not wealthy but comfortable. His parents were both doctors. Mine were a secretary and a mechanic. I want to specialize in cardiology, he told me over breadsticks. Help people live longer, healthier lives. I thought it was romantic, this man who wanted to fix broken hearts. We married right after his residency. I was 24, he was 26. The wedding was small but perfect. My parents' backyard, my grandmother's dress altered to fit me, Tom's cousin playing guitar. In the photos, we look impossibly young and happy. The early years were hard but good. Tom's long hours, my shift work at the hospital, an apartment we could barely afford, but we were building something together. When he finally got his practice established, when we bought our first house, when we started talking about kids, it all felt like victory. We tried for children for 5 years, monthly disappointments that brought us closer together, until the final one that nearly broke us apart. The fertility specialist's words were clinical but devastating. Unexplained infertility. Tom held me while I cried in the parking lot outside the clinic. We'll figure it out, he whispered. We'll try something else. But we didn't. Somehow the conversation just stopped. We threw ourselves into work, into home improvement projects, into being the couple who had everything except the one thing we wanted most. Maybe that's when the distance started. Not the lying, not the cheating, but the quiet growing apart that happens when you stop dreaming the same dreams. I found the credit card statements on a Tuesday in November. Tom had always handled our finances, and I'd never questioned it. But when I needed to check our joint account for something, I discovered a credit card I didn't know existed. Dinner at restaurants I'd never been to. Charges at Victoria's Secret. I hadn't shopped there in years. A hotel in the city on dates when Tom had supposedly been working late. Gas station purchases in neighborhoods he had no reason to visit. The amounts weren't huge. Tom wasn't stupid, but they painted a picture I couldn't ignore. I sat at our kitchen table, the statements spread out like evidence, and felt something inside me crack. Not break, not yet, just crack, like ice on a pond when the temperature drops. When Tom came home that night, I had dinner ready. Pot roast, his favorite. We ate in companionable silence, the way we had 1,000 times before. "How was your day?" I asked, the same question I'd asked every day for 22 years. "Busy," he said, the same answer he'd given 1,000 times. Mrs. Patterson's labs came back concerning. I might need to refer her to an oncologist. He looked tired. There were gray streaks in his hair that hadn't been there 5 years ago. Lines around his eyes from squinting at medical charts. This was the man I'd fallen in love with. The man who'd held me through miscarriages and family funerals and ordinary Tuesday night dinners. This was also the man who'd been lying to me for months. "Tom," I said quietly, "we need to talk." He looked up from his plate, and for just a second, I saw something flicker across his face. Fear? Relief? I couldn't tell. "What about?" I pulled out the credit card statements, set them on the table between us like a challenge. Tom stared at them without speaking. The silence stretched out until I thought I might scream. "Her name is Rachel," he said finally. "She's a pharmaceutical rep. It started 6 months ago." Just like that. 22 years of marriage, and he confessed to infidelity like he was ordering coffee. 6 months? My voice sounded strange, like it was coming from someone else. "Lisa, I never meant for this to happen. You have to believe that." "Do I?" He reached across the table trying to take my hand. I pulled away. "It just happened. She was calling on the practice and we started talking. She's going through a divorce and she was lonely and I was..." "You were what?" "I was lonely too." The words hit me like a physical blow. Lonely. In our house, in our bed, in our 22-year marriage. Lonely. "I'm right here," I whispered. "I've been right here the whole time." "I know, God, Lisa, I know. But we've been like roommates for years. When was the last time we really talked? When was the last time you looked at me like you were happy to see me?" I wanted to argue, to defend myself, to point out all the ways he'd been distant too. But part of me knew he was right. We'd been going through the motions, maintaining the structure of our marriage while letting the heart of it slowly die. "So you decided to have an affair." "I decided to feel alive again." His voice broke. I'm so sorry, Lisa. I never wanted to hurt you." The confession continued over the next hour. Rachel Morrison, 38, divorced, no kids. They'd been meeting for drinks after her sales calls, dinner a few times. The hotel charges were recent. Only 3 times, he swore, as if that made it better. "Do you love her?" I asked. Tom was quiet for a long time. "I don't know. I think I might." That's when I broke. Not cracked, broke. 22 years of marriage, and my husband thought he might love someone else. Someone younger, someone without our history of disappointment and routine and quiet resignation. I left the house that night, drove to Amy's, and cried until I had no tears left. Amy held me on her couch while I sobbed about wasted years and broken promises and the sound of Tom's voice when he said Rachel's name. "What are you going to do?" Amy asked. "I don't know." But I did know. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. The next few weeks were horrible. Tom moved into the guest room. We were polite to each other, careful, like strangers forced to share space. He said he'd ended things with Rachel, that he wanted to try counseling, that he'd do anything to save our marriage. I made an appointment with Dr. Morrison, the therapist everyone recommended. Sat in her office and tried to explain how it felt to discover that the life you thought you were living was a lie. Marriage is work, Dr. Morrison said. It's possible to recover from infidelity, but both partners have to be committed to the process. He says he wants to try. What do you want? I stared out her window at the parking lot below. Tom's car was there. He'd driven us together, like we were a team. But we weren't a team. We were two people who'd forgotten how to be alone, clinging to a marriage that had died somewhere between the fertility clinic and the everyday routine of disappointment. I want to not hurt anymore, I said. That's understandable. But healing takes time. It takes work. What if I don't want to do the work? Dr. Morrison leaned forward. What do you mean? What if I just want it to be over? I filed for divorce the next Monday. Tom was at the hospital, so I left the papers on his dresser with a note. I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. He called me 27 times that day. I didn't answer. When he finally came to Amy's house, I was ready for him. We sat on her front porch in the cold, two people who'd once shared everything, trying to figure out how to share nothing. Lisa, please, don't do this. We can work through this. Can we? Because I don't think we can. I think we've been broken for a long time, and your affair just made it obvious. We can try counseling. I'll do anything. Will you? Because 3 months ago, you were telling another woman you might love her. You were buying her lingerie and taking her to hotels. You were building a life with her while I was home folding your laundry. Tom started crying. In 22 years, I'd seen him cry maybe 5 times. At his father's funeral, when we lost the last baby, when his best friend died in a car accident. It should have moved me. It should have made me want to comfort him. Instead, I felt nothing. I made a mistake, he said. One mistake in 22 years. It wasn't one mistake, Tom. It was 100 small choices. Every time you lied about where you were, every time you texted her while I was in the room, every time you chose her over me. He reached for my hand, and this time I let him take it. His fingers were cold, trembling. I choose you, he whispered. I'm choosing you now. It's too late. And it was. Not because I couldn't forgive him, I probably could have eventually, but because I'd realized something in those weeks of careful politeness in separate bedrooms. I didn't want to forgive him. I didn't want to do the work of rebuilding what we'd broken. I didn't want to spend the next 20 years wondering who he was texting, where he was going, whether he was thinking about someone else when he kissed me goodnight. I wanted to be alone. I wanted to remember what it felt like to be myself. Not half of a couple, not Tom's wife, not the woman who'd stayed while he fell in love with someone else. The divorce was finalized last week. Tom kept the house. I didn't want it anymore. Too many memories, too many rooms where we'd been happy before we learned how to be miserable together. I'm renting a small apartment downtown. 1 bedroom, a view of the river, space for exactly 1 person. It's quiet in a way our house never was. No one's scheduled to accommodate, no one's preferences to consider. I eat cereal for dinner if I want to. I watch romantic comedies without apologizing for them. I sleep in the middle of the bed. Amy thinks I'm making a mistake. You could have worked it out, she says. Tom's a good man who made a bad choice. Maybe she's right. Maybe I gave up too easily. Maybe I should have fought harder for what we had. But I don't think what we had was worth fighting for. Not anymore. Tom married Rachel 6 months after our divorce was final. I heard about it through mutual friends. A small ceremony. Just family. They looked happy in the photos someone showed me, though I wish they hadn't. I'm not bitter about it. Not really. I think Tom deserves to be happy, and if Rachel can give him something I couldn't, then I'm glad for both of them. I'm learning to be happy too. It's harder than it sounds, starting over at 43, but I'm doing it. I'm taking art classes, traveling with Amy, dating occasionally. Nothing serious yet, but I'm open to possibilities in a way I haven't been in years. The betrayal taught me something important. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is also the thing that sets you free. Tom's affair ended our marriage, but it also ended my acceptance of a life that had become too small, too quiet, too safe. I'm not the same person I was when I found those credit card statements. I'm stronger now, more sure of what I want and what I won't accept. I'm learning to trust my instincts again, to pay attention to the small alarm bells instead of silencing them. Jake was right, and I was too trusting. But I'm not anymore. And maybe that's not such a bad thing. The papers are still on the passenger seat, but they feel lighter now. 22 years of marriage legally dissolved. But the woman who signed them is someone new, someone who knows that sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another. I put the car in drive and head home to my quiet apartment, my new life, my second chance at happiness. And for the first time in months, I'm not afraid of being alone.